I had already started some of my seeds indoors, and then I got the idea to make use of a small section of the garden where I could put in a 4-bucket stand. This way, I could increase my garden space without eating up more of my backyard. So, with that idea, it was off to the big box store to get a few things to start the project. I've mentioned in the past that I always check the 70% off lumber bin, and this time I hit the mother lode. The bin was loaded with fence pickets and other wood I could use to make not only the stand, but probably another bed as well. I ended up getting all this wood for only $27. Sunny Girl watched as I loaded it all into the car. But there is always a fly in the ointment. I forgot that I ran out of screws when I made the bucket raised bed, and now didn't have any for the project. I hated the idea of making another trip to the big box store, and then thought about using the framing nailer I bought recently. This would give me a chance to get familiar with using it, and the nails were for outdoor structures, so why not? I watched a few videos to figure out how to set it up, and then did a few test shots to get the right depth, which helped me realize this would work just fine to frame the 4-bucket stand. I was ready to rock and roll. The space I would be dealing with was 31 inches wide, so I figured a 26 by 26 inch stand could hold 4 buckets and easily slide into the space. All I needed to do was cut the links and begin the process of assembling the stand. Just to let you know, the wood in the bargain bin can have blemishes, but for my purposes, I could work around them. Putting the sides together with the nailer was easier than I thought, and only every now and then did a nail not go in all the way and I had to hammer it flush. In no time, I had my 2 sides for the stand complete and wanted to test out how the buckets would fit. Watching the video now, I can see the point where I realized I had made a mistake. The bottom slat needed to be higher and not on the ground. But the problem with the nailer is that, unlike screws, removing these nails is very difficult. So I was stuck with what I had. I also realized 4 more buckets would cost me $26. That would wipe out my savings on the wood. I guess at this point you'll begin to understand why my friends say I'm cheap, because I was unwilling to give up my savings on the wood. All of this now meant switching to make a regular bed with the wood I had, and how that would work. It wouldn't be that hard, I thought. All I'd have to do is shave off a 1/4 inch on one of the pickets to make side planks fit. Oh, yes, and I went to the big box store and bought a small box of screws. So it was back to doing pilot holes. Strange, but once I made that decision, everything began to move pretty quickly. I was able to join the two sides using the smaller nail gun, and in no time had a small bed made. I even had enough wood left over to make a lip around the top and another long bed. This too went pretty quickly, with me making two sides and then joining them. And I hadn't given up on the framing nailer, because now I had a clear idea of the goal and only a small box of screws. All I had to do now was put the beds in place, fill them, and call it a day. I started with cardboard. Then had to cut a few logs to have enough for each bed. Followed by a bag of leaves as my organic matter. I even used the banana stalks from cutting back the banana tree. With that done, I was ready to add compost to each bed. Followed by some of my homemade bone meal. And finally, topsoil. It may not have turned out like I planned, but next time I'll start hardening off my seedlings to plant them outside. Despite the Florida cool weather, my in-ground planted okra and watermelons have sprouted. The banana tree also now has 4 pups, and the trees are signaling that the ground has warmed up enough to plant. See you next time.